Welcome back to Killer Fun, where we explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week. I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And today, we're so glad that you're with us. We are talking The Menu.
Yum, yum.
Eat the Rich. This is a satirical, dark comedy with a little bit of horror mixed in. It is...
It's Hell's Kitchen, but like for real.
Yeah, except all fictional.
All fictional, of course.
Yeah.
But like if Hell's Kitchen was a little bit more hellish.
Well, but he's not even like hellish towards the employees, which is what I think of.
That's true.
He's not really even hellish to anybody aside from his whole plan at the end of the meal.
Right, that's very true.
Right.
Yeah, but it is hellish.
It is.
The whole thing. But you're right. In Hell's Kitchen, it's a little bit more towards the people.
Right.
But they seem to actually have a good working environment. But the whole like satire on the yes, chef thing is just hysterical.
That's right. It is very, very funny. The clapping to get everyone's attention.
Yes.
I literally jumped every time he clapped.
Time.
I watched it first. I watched it by myself. Then I watched it with my husband. Then I put it on while I was making my notes yesterday. And every time he clapped, I jumped.
Every time.
Every time.
But that was the whole point of it. And it was just great. It was just great. The silliness of the food. Okay. In times past, I have referred to myself as kind of a foodie light. You know, because I like fancy food, and I realize maybe I don't like fancy food. I like fancy environments.
Sure.
Fancy environments, nice, pretty presentation. Cheeseburger fries, totally cool.
Yeah.
Little balls in ocean foam.
Yeah, not so much.
Maybe not so much.
So not a molecular gastronomy fan.
Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not rich enough to have tried this. Let's be honest. Sure. But when I look at that, I'm kind of like, does that actually satisfy anything? But I also do eat a little weird. I do things like I open a can of peas. Okay, let's be honest. If we had the money, I'd go try it.
Oh, yeah. Win the lottery? I'm totally going to do
I'd eat ocean foam.
Yeah.
I would. I'd do it.
I would. And I'd also plan for a burger on the way home.
Yes, exactly.
Because I know I'm going to spend $1,250 on a meal, and I'm going to be hungry at the end.
And I'm going to have to swing by the Whataburger. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. All right, so the movie is still in theaters, but is also streaming on HBO.
Yeah.
And I would say not really a theater necessary sort of movie.
Definitely not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, fun. But you can really get all of the enjoyment out of it without having the big screen. You know, there's some movies where you really need the big screen.
Yes.
To appreciate everything that's going on. This is not one of them. The HBO is fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the cast, Ralph Fiennes is Chef Slowick, and he plays the villain so well. I mean, he plays non-villains well also, but...
Okay, but the role that I think of him in, he's a complete villain.
Yeah.
From the Hannibal series.
Oh, yes. That's Francis Dolarhyde.
Yes.
Yes, from Red Dragon. Yeah, and of course Voldemort in Harry Potter, and a literal Nazi, Amon Goth in Schindler's List. He can play the bad guy well.
No, definitely.
Yeah. And then Anna Taylor-Joy is Margot, and she's probably best known for being Beth Harmon in The Queen's Gambit, which I just loved. But she's also kind of a scream queen. She's done lots of horror movies. So there was one called The Witch and Split, and then a horror comedy called Thoroughbreds. She's done
no
lots
idea.
Of that. Oh, yeah. She's like, well, because I don't tend to watch a lot of horror movies.
No. I just had no idea.
Okay. So, yeah, and it kind of makes sense because she's got a very unusual look. Her eyes are really wide set.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And my husband always says she kind of looks like a praying mantis a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I know. And it sounds like a compliment, but it kind of is a compliment.
It is. She's just so unusual looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes her very memorable and makes her good for those kinds of roles.
That's true.
Yeah. Nicholas Holt is the shockingly cold and absolutely out of tune Tyler. And I was like, he looks so familiar.
Yeah, who is this guy?
It's because he's King Peter in Hulu's The Great.
Okay, I haven't watched that yet.
Oh my gosh, do yourself a favor and watch it.
Okay.
It's funny. It's about the royal family in Russia.
Okay.
They say a lot of huzzah, and it is flat funny.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah.
I was always obsessed with like the English royalty shows, like all of those.
Oh, yeah. This is not like The Crown.
Oh, and he was in The Favorite? I'm kind of, you see, I'm Googling. Yeah. I'm like,
he was also in the zombie love story, Warm Bodies.
Warm Bodies?
It was a love story, zombie love story. Like he becomes a zombie. He is a zombie, but he's still a little human.
Okay.
And like there's this like love starts to heal him. I just remember.
That's really interesting.
Silly and fun and cute and a little heartwarming and but weird.
Is it I'm gonna have to go look this up because I feel like it's like a Twilight-ish, but zombie version.
Yeah, maybe. maybe. And then Hong Chow is hostess Elsa. She was in Big Little Lies and HBO's The Watchmen.
Okay.
That's where she looked familiar to me. Janet McTeer is food critic Lillian. She was absolutely terrifying as Helen in Ozark. It was so good. Of course, John Leguizamo is the washed up movie star, but he's anything but washed up with 150 credits to his name, just acting credits.
What do you think of when you see him?
John Leguizamo?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, yes.
Every time.
Yeah.
I see him doing that monologue. Every time.
And then Judith Light.
I know.
I'm like, I haven't seen Judith Light in forever, but she's Anne, and it's just,
Yeah, delightful.
She's still kind of asking who the boss is.
Yep.
Yeah. And then one more that I'm going to mention is Arturo Castro was one of the tech bros that's there that works for the investor in the restaurant. And we just watched Mr. Corman on Apple TV Plus, and he was Victor in that. And I just
loved him.
Yes, I did too. He was so good and accessible and good acting, and it was fun to see him in that the disparity between his role in Mr. Corman, where he's a UPS driver.
He's a UPS driver and like all around good guy,
and then here he's this like
sleazy ladder climber.
Yeah. I mean, like he literally admits to cheating on his wife, and is just not and like kind of brags about it.
Yeah, like he's just a jerk.
Yeah, but he did a good job being a jerk.
He was a great jerk, though. Yeah.
Made you think he almost deserved what was coming. Almost.
All
right, so let's recap. So we get a peek inside a very exclusive, very expensive restaurant. From the ferry to get to the island where the restaurant Hawthorne is the only thing there, and the very expensive $1,250 per person price tag to some famous and some just fabulously wealthy guest lists. This is a night to remember. We learned that Margot, Tyler's date, wasn't scheduled to be there, throwing the famous Chef Slowick for a loop. Everyone has a secret at this dinner, and the sins will not go unpunished.
Nice. I love it. That's great.
I mean, I just really enjoyed this movie.
I know. I wish I had more clever things to say about it, except that, sometimes you watch a movie and it's like you're just watching a parade. Yay! And that's how I felt. So like, I don't have anything that's like really of depth to say. It's just like, yay.
I could talk I kid you not, I could talk for 3 hours about this movie. I could dissect almost every line, either because it's funny or ridiculous or interesting or thought-provoking or just like worthy of...
Maybe I need to watch it again and catch some of these little things that are, because I know that there's depth in the satire. I know it is, but it's so freaking entertaining. That I really just sat there like, but like you do that with a parade, and yet it takes 80 people to hold one of them balloons on Thanksgiving. A lot of work. There's a lot of depth go.
And it's easy to
just like
only
a kid,
touch the surface of it.
and see it.
Yeah.
Like, woohoo.
Well, maybe we can bring a little depth to it today.
Yes, let's do.
Yeah.
Let's do.
It was really well received. Critics really loved it, 88%. Audiences pretty well, 76%.
Yeah,
but I think for a dark comedy in particular,
that's pretty good.
That's pretty amazing because a lot of people don't get dark comedy.
We have discussed this at length.
Yes. So it was supposed to be filmed in Scotland, but the pandemic moved the filming to Georgia.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So it's a bottle movie, so most of the action takes place in one location.
Yeah.
But that said, there were a bunch of filming locations all around Georgia. So they had started on Jekyll Island, and that is the initial arriving on the island. That's where all of that was filmed. Now, all of the windows and exits for the restaurant were on a set with blue screen.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Tybee Island is the beach area. Then there's Hampton Island, which is used for the swampy bits. Run. If you can get away, you don't have to suffer the consequences. Spoiler alert, nobody gets away. Well, not nobody.
Well, yeah, not nobody.
Mostly none of the people running through the forest. And then there were some outdoor locations shot at McAllister State Park because there's a lot of different kinds of locations there. You can see water, but there's also fields, but there's also trees. So, and it's easier to get there than to an actual island.
Makes sense.
And then when you see some cityscapes, that's Savannah.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. I do love the islands in Georgia. My favorite is Little Sea Island.
Okay.
Which, I will never afford to live there, but it's nice to go and we used to bike over it. We biked along it.
Okay.
And then we would stay over in St. Simons.
Oh, fun.
And it was very fun.
And then inspiration for the film.
Oh, yes. Let's talk
about that. So Will Tracy and Seth Reese are the screenwriters, and they both wrote for The Onion. And then Tracy went on to write for Succession, and Reese went on to write for Late Night with Seth Meyers. And then they came back together to work on this. And there's a chef, Dominique Crenn, who was the food consultant for the film. And she says, even though Slowick is crazy, I think we can use that as both a figurative and technical term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's some stuff going on here that she understands his way of thinking. She doesn't agree with it, but she can kind of understand it because as a food service worker, whether that's a server or a chef in the kitchen or whatever, you have some resentment towards the customer because they don't often appropriately appreciate the work that goes into what they're doing for you. But you need them. Literally, there's no point in having the restaurant if you don't have people to serve.
Right. It's a little bi-directional tension.
Yeah. So Will Tracy said this was inspired by an actual meal he ate.
Oh.
Yes. So he went to a restaurant that was on an island off the coast of Norway.
Okay.
He says it's not Favakin, but like Favakin. So Favakin was very famously a restaurant on an island where everything was sourced locally.
Right.
And
Which is super
whole,
cool.
like,
That part is super cool.
It is super cool. Like they would literally go and what was on the menu was what the chefs fished out of either a pond or an ocean that day.
Like that's super cool.
It's really.
It actually, I have like all kinds of things to talk about that subject.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Super
Interesting.
cool.
He said he felt really claustrophobic.
Oh.
Because they're telling the story for hours. Oh. They're telling the story with the menu and there's literally no way to leave. Because you're on an island.
You're on an island.
You can't be like fake a phone call and, I'm going to go get my car and drive off. No, this is not going to work for that. So that was kind of where the inspiration for this came from.
That's pretty great.
I mentioned Dominique Crenn, who is she has a restaurant. It's about $410 a person to eat at her restaurant, but she actually adapted dishes from her restaurant for this. Everything you see is an actual
dish.
Actual dish. It was very important to them to not use prop food.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. That made it a lot harder, I bet.
I'm sure it did. And also, they actually ate the food. The actors did. They actually ate the food and were honestly having a reaction to the food as well as, now they were told how to react, but also like there's a certain level of it that you just don't fake.
Yeah.
Right?
You put something in your mouth and it's like,
this is delightful.
Or this is weird.
Or this is awful.
Like the breadless condiments. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes.
That was so funny. Like how some people were like, okay, let's try that.
Yeah.
Versus others that were like, no, we need bread.
Yeah.
like,
yes.
We are Americans. We need bread.
That's right. In a restaurant known for its bread. Imagine expecting bread.
Expecting bread.
Yeah. And there's this whole idea, the part of what they're talking about as far as the satirization happening in this movie is how people who can afford a $1,250 meal, they have a certain level of expectation, right? Like talking about the broken emotion, that's served, and they very entitled because they're spending this large amount of money.
Yes.
And that they have a certain level of expectation, but they also often, not always, not everybody, often can sometimes come across as a little snooty and unkind because they're expecting a certain level of service because it's so expensive.
Right.
Because you can expect a certain level of service and be kind about it, but often people who can afford.
And that's why I say I'm not a foodie.
Right.
I go there for the service, the atmosphere.
Right.
It's a matter of what your expectations are, because it's like, okay, for the food critic, he invited the food critic. She's come to, critique the food. And she's paying a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
So she's coming in with all these expectations of, it better be.
Right.
Wow, but for others who are coming in with the service mind, like the sleazy businessmen,
right?
They really couldn't care less about like what the food. They expected the experience and the service.
Right.
So when they ask for bread, they expect
to be given
bread because they came with the service mindset. And it's like, your expectations when you're paying that much money, you have come to experience something, and part of that experience is judging it. But it's ugly.
Right. It can be
really ugly. Like there should be like kind of a level of, I'm going to come and experience this person's art and be open to it. But we see it even like when you walk through an art museum.
Right.
And people are so judgy and you're like, okay, but there's a difference between your preference and acting like you're a real critic and know things.
Right.
In fact, the only person that didn't bother me was the actual food critic. Because I was like, do your job, man. That's what you're here for. And if he don't like it, then he don't like it. And you know what? He shouldn't have a broken sauce.
Well, unless the broken sauce was intentional.
Unless it was.
And even that, and maybe that is also a commentary.
Maybe so.
Instead of just, maybe that's a question to ask. Because he is out there walking around.
Right. Like, you know,
it's like, is this intentional?
But imagine the spotlight.
Yeah. Well, or just like, I noticed this emulsion's different than what I'm used to.
Right. Like, let them talk about it.
Is there a commentary on it? And that gives them the opportunity, even if the broken emulsion is unintentional, you make something up.
That's right. So here's the thing. In negotiation practices, one of the best things you can do is provide opportunity for the other party to save face. And that's bigger in certain cultures, but I would say even in certain subcultures that becomes like, so when you're critiquing art, giving somebody the opportunity to save face.
Right.
You know, but it doesn't mean that she can't go back and write her article and be like, this was his comment about it. This is my comment about it.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
But maybe not in the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe save it for the article.
Yeah.
If she was ever going to live to write an article.
Right.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Something there.
Yep. So our support organization for this one is World Central Kitchen.
Oh, good.
Because I just love that this particular organization and that they feed people in a humanitarian crisis. They not only feed them fresh and freshly prepared food, but they also help heal the community. They bring people together. They help teach people how to cook and how to cook in extreme circumstances and really try and make the community better. So,
and respect their culture.
Exactly. It's a very important organization. And of course you can donate to them. But if you yourself are finding yourself food insecure and you need help locating your local food bank or assistance, go ahead and send us an email.
Yes.
And we'll do our best to help you find resources in your area.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. With that, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Is It True, Psychology Break, and Real Life after this.
So here's how it works. Christy wrecks her search history. Hey, an essay. We promise it's nothing more nefarious than a podcast. To find out what's true, some of the psychological motivations behind the characters' actions, and real-life applications that relate to our topic. I have no idea what Christy decided to look up. Could be the same thing that captured my curiosity or something I never thought of.
Is it true? So as they're waiting for the ferry, I don't know, it's a yacht. So I don't know. It seems like ferry is too...
Yeah.
It's literally what it's doing. It's ferrying the customers to the island. But it is a yacht.
Yeah, it's a yacht. It's gorgeous.
Yes. But they're waiting. And Tyler fusses at Margot because she's smoking before the dinner and she's going to destroy her palate.
Okay. I'm going to say that this is... I kind of felt like that was marginally true.
Yes. I don't know that a single cigarette before the meal would really make that much of a difference.
Right. But if you're like if you're a smoker, it might have changed.
Right. Yes. So medical news today talks about how smoking affects people's taste buds.
Okay.
And they talk about how, a conventional pairing is coffee and cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coffee is one of the things that would have its taste most affected for a smoker.
What?
Because it's bitterness that you often taste in coffee. That's part of the flavor profile. Right. Even if you have a coffee that's not bitter, bitterness is one of the primary sensations that you get on your taste bud. And smoking seems to have the most effect on the bitterness taste.
Wait, up or down?
Down.
So it becomes so much smoother.
Right.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
you should not have told me that. Because I don't like bitter coffee, but I love coffee. I'm too broke to smoke cigarettes.
You're right. Amen. It's bad for your health.
That too.
It's horrible for your health.
Yeah, that too.
And it's expensive.
It's expensive. But interesting.
But the ability to taste salty, sweet, and sour is not influenced or not nearly as influenced.
That's interesting.
As the bitter flavor.
So everything they eat would be far sweeter, smoother.
Right.
That's interesting.
But you wouldn't taste it as fully. Either. So,
He's right. It would.
Yeah.
The smoking does, but not maybe the one cigarette
right
before they get on the yacht to go over there.
I mean, you assume she's been a smoker for quite some time. Yeah. So probably.
Like at this point.
Like it doesn't really matter that much. And that smoking also affects the way your taste buds regenerate.
Oh.
And so it can take quite a bit of time for the flavor profiles to reemerge, if they ever do, even after you stop smoking.
Wow.
So
interesting. Wow.
So boy, that was a tiny restaurant, just 12 people.
Yeah. It was super small.
So I was like, is that 12 seats and a private island? Are there other restaurants that are equally small? No, we're going to talk about more.
Okay.
But I wanted to talk about a particular restaurant that seats just 14 people and also has an interesting sort of location.
Okay, all right. Because I'm going to say there are definitely restaurants that are that small.
Yes.
Even high end, I think, but nothing like. Well, I hadn't heard of these restaurant on island things.
Okay.
This is new to me.
Yeah.
But like if I think of Boston and the North End, yeah, there's some that, well, they probably pull in more than 14, but they shouldn't.
Right.
Because it's tiny.
Yeah. Etha is a restaurant in the Maldives, which is a set of islands just below the southernmost tip of India.
Okay.
So they're little islands.
Do you know, every time we talk about something and you say something like a set of islands, I immediately want to be there.
I mean...
I immediately love it.
Also me too, because...
a set of islands?
That's a lot of beach.
Yeah.
And a lot of calming, whatever it is, reverse ions,
yeah,
blah, 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 whatever it is that makes... Yeah. I don't care if beaches are inherently dirty, even if they're clean from refuse. Care. I don't care. I just don't care. we were made to swim with those bacteria. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. But
but this restaurant in the Maldives. Okay,
Ithia has Etha. Just 14 guests.
Okay,
it is relatively affordable. At about $400 a person.
Oh my God.
But without wine.
Oh gosh. Well now. I want the drink package.
Exactly. To eat there, you must be barefoot.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But because it's sort of in this Asian area, that's part of the culture there.
Beautiful.
And it is an underwater restaurant.
What?
So the whole thing is like if you go to one of those aquariums where they have the
you walk under the
aquarium.
Yeah,
you walk through
itself.
And the fish swim over top of you and there's sharks and whatever. This is in the ocean under the water.
Oh my God, under the sea.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It was built about 10 years ago and they expect the materials that it was built out of to really only remain structurally sound for another 10 years. So
we have to make it in 10 years.
I gotta win
maybe
the lottery
not year
first.
9.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe we aim for like year 7. Everything's settled, but still, strong.
Yeah. So, but it's like, 20 years for a restaurant is an extraordinarily good run, but it's interesting for it to close only because the restaurant itself literally isn't safe anymore.
Right. But they know that going in.
Right.
That's very interesting because they can provide an experience.
Right.
That is unique, especially because it won't exist forever.
Right. Exactly. It's not like the restaurant's closing down and a new restaurant can go in its place.
No. Oh my gosh.
Super cool, right?
Genius. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go.
Would $1,250 a person be the most expensive restaurant you could go to?
You know what? I want to say yes, but I'm sure the answer is no.
It's close, but no. So
hit me with it. How much is it?
So there's Sublimotion
Okay.
I'm going to say it the way I know you're supposed to say it, even though it makes me feel pretentious. Ibiza, which I'm like, Ibiza is how it's spelled and how I always grew up saying it. But I know it's Ibiza.
Okay.
But I feel pretentious saying it that way.
Okay. It doesn't feel pretentious to hear it that way, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, Sublimotion is a very exclusive, expensive restaurant. It currently costs about $2,500 per person to eat there.
See, that's pretentious.
Yeah. And it does include wine, but they're only open June 1st to September 31st every year. They're only open in the summertime.
See, there's something about that, making something exclusive. That is the key.
And it also only seats 12 diners.
I'm like, we can do this.
Oh, yeah. When I win the lottery, absolutely.
We can create something.
Oh,
that's so exclusive for no other reason than it's exclusive.
Oh.
And then we can be millionaires.
Sounds like church.
Oh, dang.
I'm going to cut that out.
Please don't. That's funny.
That one got Chucky really good. And then in Shanghai, there's a restaurant called Ultraviolet.
Ooh, interesting.
And it's like before there was Sublimotion in Ibiza, there was Ultraviolet.
Okay.
This
Do
is
they
kind
have
of
a shtick other than like the food?
I mean, that's part of it.
I mean, they're not underwater.
Well, no. I don't know what Sublimotion's stick is. I think there's like a presentation as well, like a portion of it, like there's entertainment. But Ultraviolet is a multi-sensory experience.
Ooh.
Has a light show and themed courses and diners' names. Like instead of having a card with your name on it, your name is projected at your seat onto the table. I mean, it's this very
super modern.
It's a very like modern technical sort of thing. It's about $600 a person, and the restaurant seats just 10 people.
Wow.
And you aren't given the address when you make your reservation. You're given a pre-appointed location at which to meet. Everyone for that seating meets there, and then you are escorted to the location.
What?
Which I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. So, I mean, theoretically, you would know where it was. But that also means if they change restaurant location.
Oh my gosh! Because
they could change restaurant location.
Yeah, because it's all text show. They can put it up and take it down.
Right. I mean, that's kind of cool. Then I have to mention L'Arpège in Paris, which is about $400 a person. But I mentioned that one because they have the chef there is Alain Passard, which they mentioned the Passard egg as part of you're the last to be found in our game of high stakes tag or hide and seek. I guess it's sort of tag and hide and seek.
Yeah, it's like flashlight tag.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, except higher stakes. So and the guys served a Passard egg.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a more down to earth $400 a person.
Okay.
Yeah. So still very expensive. And then there's a whole bunch of these restaurants that are,
wow.
They have tasting menus ranging anywhere from, $300 or $400 a person up to $1,000, $1,200 more per person. But so interesting.
That is so interesting.
I mean, but you gotta have money, even for the quote unquote cheap places on that list. They're extravagant expenses for most of us.
I mean, we're Texans. We can come up with something.
Sure.
We can. There's a lot of Texas engineering that could go into this right here, using a food truck.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm thinking. All right, we're gonna keep going, but I think by the end of this, I'm gonna have myself a business plan to write.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Tyler, very excitedly identifies the results of a Pacojet and tries to garner some cachet for himself by saying he also owns a Pacojet.
I don't really know what a Pacojet is.
Okay, I'm going to tell you because a Pacojet is a real thing.
Okay.
And basically, it takes very hard frozen food.
Okay.
And can micro puree it so that it has that snow-like texture, which Tyler is pointing out, without thawing the food. So normally if you were to like throw some, like, so if you throw frozen fruit into a blender, it thaws it a little bit, right? Because it's creating the heat, and I don't know how they do it, but
so it's a really fancy snow cone machine.
Right. Yes.
Made for other types of food.
Right.
Where they can do it even more finely cut.
Right. Very, very fine. It's basically like the best snow cone machine ever. And it does help. It introduces air into this food, and it does allow a lot more flavor to come through.
Okay. But, how much did you even look at how much that was?
I didn't even look how much it cost.
Like, we don't even know.
I can't afford it. I'm never going to use it. I don't have a freezer that will freeze things hard enough, I'm sure.
I didn't think about that.
That's also another thing. You have to have a freezer that freezes things hard enough.
Like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the patrons are served wine that was not just from a single vineyard, but from a single row of vines.
I was like...
Really?
I was underwhelmed with that, but I guess that matters.
Okay.
I don't know that matters.
So David Hill Vineyard in Oregon, in the U.S., has a particular bottle, a particular vintage where they do this exact thing.
Okay.
It's called the Golden Cluster, and it is their first row of vines. So it's a particular set of vines where all the other grapes in the vineyards have had been cut from these vines. They're the original vines.
Okay.
And so what they do is they harvest this group of vines. They're not all the same variety. They're different.
Okay.
But they harvest from this first row by hand. And as soon as they've all been harvested, they're all pressed together and then made into this one particular vintage.
So it's a blend. Because it's the first row.
Right. It's this entire first row of...
Okay, that's a little cooler. Because it's like, there's something cool about
it's not
being
like
the first one that everything else was planted from.
Right.
And I like the idea that geographically on the vineyard, what it does is it's a complete... It's the entire sample of the vineyard. Right. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. And their vintage that they're talking about here for this particular one was from 2019. But it wasn't terribly expensive. It was like $40-ish bottle.
That's really not bad for something like that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought, I'm like,
I'm impressed now.
That's kind of cool.
That is cool. All right.
So as they're having their non-bread bread course.
Yeah.
Slowick informs the diners that 65% of all crops in the world are green, with only 6% of crops that are grown being made up of fruit and vegetables. This is incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
Quite incorrect.
Because I felt like, really? I don't think so, but...
Yeah. No.
Okay.
So according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, fruit and vegetable make up about 22% of crops.
Okay.
Which is quite a bit more than 6%.
Yeah.
So depending on what you count as grain, they call it cereals.
Okay.
That's about 33% of all crops.
Okay.
And then there's sugar crops, which is another 24%. So even if you lumped both of those together, you still wouldn't be at 65%.
Okay. Oh, all right. All
So
right.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Wrong. But it doesn't really matter, because who are they going to go repeat this information to?
He could like lie to him all night.
Yeah, exactly. So the sommelier serves a hyper decanted wine to them.
Yeah. And I know that's probably a thing.
It's real, and I kind of want to try it.
Oh, okay. Tell me. Why?
And it's also probably a little bit of a slight, because what it does is it makes a younger, cheaper bottle of wine taste older and better.
Ooh, interesting.
So basically, it's a blender, or you use an immersion blender.
Oh, okay.
You pour the wine into your blender or into a container and take your immersion blender and you blend it until it gets all foamy.
Okay.
Only takes 30 to 60 seconds.
All right.
And then you let the bubbles dissipate and it tastes better.
What? So we can just do this?
We can just do this. So it aerates the wine and softens the tannins. So it decants the wine and ages it all at once. I have the perfect bottle of red wine for us to try this.
We're going to have to do this. Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm like, I so want to do this.
It's something we can do.
I know. Like, and also it was kind of a middle finger to these rich people because it was probably cheap ass bottle of wine.
Right. And that's why it was hyper
decanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny how you come up with these terminologies and makes it sound better. For instance, like there's a place downtown and they have keg wine.
Oh, okay.
Right? And basically what this is it's boxed wine, right? Because it's it's a keg of wine.
Right.
And the whole idea is that it's greener for the environment because these wooden kegs, these whatever, can be things. The vats that they have that are much bigger than your typical barrels, but like it can hold so much more and it's not using the glass and it's redone. And the more you put in it, the better it all tastes. Same thing like when you buy something that's like a whiskey that's in a certain barrel or wine that's been aged in whiskey barrels and things like that to get it. And so, but at the end of the day, you're kind of like, this is box wine. That is what this is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just verifying. But you know what? That's okay because it's delicious.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But we made it fancy, and that's fun.
It is fun. It's fun to make the accessible a little fancier sometimes. Mm-hmm. All of the sources that we use to inform our discussion here on Killer Fun Podcast can be found on our social media. Join us on Facebook at Killer Fun Podcast, exploring the intersection of crime and entertainment. You can find us on Twitter at Killer Fun Pod, or you can send us an email at killerfunpodcast@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to share a link to whatever information you're looking for. We love to hear from you. You might learn a little something too. All right, psychology break. Ooh. So we're going to mostly talk about perfectionism.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, but we're also going to talk about how the Hollywood Reporter has an article about the menu explores ego and exploitation in fine dining.
Yes. Well, this is okay. Before you dig into this article, it's interesting you mentioned that because we just said it's fun to make the accessible more fancy. Mm-hmm. And that is such a trend. Mm-hmm. Things that start off that are actually products and practices of the lower socioeconomic individuals in a culture often become the exclusive. For instance, bread.
Okay.
Bread was like the base. That's basic.
Right.
Except we've made it all fancy. Mm-hmm. Right? Other little things like couscous. Normal. Nope. Now it's fancy. Lobster used to be like low of the low.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's like super fancy.
Well, like the slaves in New England had to petition to not be served lobster more than 3 times a week.
Yes, exactly. Like, so all of these like food items that were these staples of individuals who were often oppressed, like you said, or just the lower socioeconomic, it was just the cheapest thing you could make, have been fancified. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting how that history is lost.
Right.
Well,
they do talk about that. And I'll have articles that I'll post on the social media, but I cut them for time for here. But talking about how food is a history of socioeconomics.
Yes.
Which they mentioned that And it's a lot to get into.
It is
but
a lot to get
so
into.
Interesting.
There are whole classes on this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a thing.
Yeah.
But the exploitation, you know.
That's
okay,
right.
ego and exploitation. Hit me with what you got there because
So,
I'm super interested.
Ralph Fiennes had some thoughts about this character that he played.
Okay.
He's someone who started off with very pure aspirations about how to make food and how to get your food to people, but he's allowed himself to become very remote. He doesn't like what he's doing. He doesn't like where he's gone. There's a real contradiction inside of him that he wants power and control, but at the deeper level, he despises himself for it, which I thought was an interesting way to view this character that he played.
Yeah.
And then Ethan Topman, who was the production designer for the movie, said all that the employees want is for Chef to promote them, to notice them, and they resent him when he takes their ideas and makes them his own. I mean, if you think about the woman who stabs Slowick in the thigh because he made sexual advances that she rebuffed and she was kind of punished for it. Right. She really wants it to be known that the whole menu and its conclusion are her idea.
Right.
But he doesn't acknowledge that ever. She has to tell the female patrons that she's eating with that it was her idea and she's very proud of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It realize that, you assume that it's his idea until she says, no, actually, that's my pitch.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But she's really seeking this acknowledgement of it. He talks about that there's like a toxicity in the kitchen that you hear about. And then there's toxicity of how patrons react to the food, that there's a whole lot of terrible issues that can happen. But Betsy Koch, a producer, one thing that we want people to understand when they see this movie is the different levels of servitude, and exploitation, and what it's like in an industry like this to see people give their bodies and souls to this type of work. We almost wanted to implicate the audience in a way that makes you take a closer look at your own behavior.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But what is perfectionism? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about perfectionism.
So perfectionism can be healthy. It can make you be self-motivated. It can drive you to overcome adversity. It can help you have high standards and goals when it's positive or adaptive. And it can help you have a desire to grow and be challenged and problem solve well. When it's maladaptive, it can really result in avoiding failure is really your entire goal and that's a negative orientation for how you're behaving. You believe that you don't deserve affection or acknowledgement unless you're perfect.
Right.
And you may also expect perfection from other people. So it's unrealistic. Those people tend to forget that they should celebrate small victories, or any victory whatsoever. And while perfectionism is a personality trait, it can be a symptom of OCD. Now, not all people who have OCD are perfectionists, and not all perfectionists have OCD.
No, but they tend to be higher in the trait.
Yeah, the Venn diagram has a larger portion of oversecting when it comes to these two particular, either the condition or the personality.
And it's
trait.
kind of by like facilitation,
right?
You can't need to do something exactly a certain amount of times without it also then being perfect, right? So it's sort of like of course. Like they're just so similar.
Right.
That causes, it's not like a causal relationship.
Right. The good news is perfectionism doesn't exist and you can learn to give it up.
You can.
Yeah. So Medium has some suggestions that they're saying that a lot of people will equate excellence and perfectionism, but they're actually opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, they're not the same thing.
No.
I have preached this message many, many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because excellence gives you room for growth and continual improvement. It celebrates the milestones along the
Right.
way. And perfectionism is just trying to avoid failure.
Right. Excellence is about the process, and perfectionism is about the outcome.
Right.
And so having a process-oriented mindset towards things is healthier than an outcome-oriented.
Right.
That said, there are certain things where outcome freaking matters.
Well, for sure.
And in that case, the perfect adherence to the process of excellence is necessary. You know, airplanes,
right.
like, you know, a lot of things we do. Medicine, when you're going into surgery, you want a perfect adherence to what we've deemed as a good outcome, right? Like, there are things in life where the perfectionism, but it has to be well adapted,
Right.
and it has to be a set of outcomes that are determined by good process,
Right.
And that's the problem. Is for people who are high in perfectionism, the problem isn't that they have a goal. The problem is that the goalposts move.
Right.
And because they're seeking worth, not an actual outcome.
Right.
They think they're going for an outcome.
Yeah.
What they really want is power, control, worthiness, these kind of things.
Affection, whatever.
These kind of things. And so that's why it kind of falls apart. And that's why it's like, okay, well, you know, and then defining perfect.
Right.
Who defines perfect for you?
Yeah.
You know, like,
We're all perfectly imperfect.
yeah.
Nobody's imperfect in the same way that you are, and therefore you are the perfect version of you
Yep.
in your imperfection.
Right.
But let's talk about what you can
Yes.
do if you have perfectionistic tendencies, what you can do to help overcome them, because
Okay.
you can unlearn them. So practice being imperfect. But you have a goal, understand what's really necessary, and evaluate when you've reached good enough is enough. So I've reached this goal. If I do this much more, it'll be quote unquote perfect. What a toll does perfect take as opposed to good enough? You know, is it more time, more energy, more resources that is incompatible with what it actually takes to get it perfect? Because good enough may be absolutely fine and you want it to be perfect, but it's going to take more time than you have, more resources than you have. Maybe it's not worth it.
Maybe it's not worth
And
it.
just recognizing that sometimes it's not worth it
Yeah.
is huge.
It's huge. 80-20 is a good way to think about this. It takes 20% of your effort to get 80% done. It takes another 80% of your effort to get the last 20 done.
Right.
Evaluate whether that's necessary. But also the problem is if you're moving goalposts, then your evaluation of that can be off.
Sure.
Right? Because by then, good enough can become an excuse to not be excellent,
Right.
Or to not do what's necessary,
Right.
If you're misevaluating what the 80 and the 20 is, but it's a good place to start. If you know you have to put 80% more effort to get that last 20%, it gives you a good indicator of like, is that worth it?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an evaluation
That's
that you
an
can
evaluation.
make. So I always think of it as like my toenails. If I'm going to paint my toenails, do they need to look perfect up close? Maybe sometimes they do, but most of the time,
Nope.
I can, walk in 2 miles an hour from 10 feet away.
Yeah.
Do they look good enough? That's enough.
Do they look perfect from that level?
Right.
And sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it perfect here? Or is it, yeah.
Right.
Like,
Is it going to look just as nice walking down the street if I give it a perfect finish or a good enough finish?
Yeah.
Chances are they're going to look exactly the same.
Right, exactly. And this kind of comes into a reframing of things,
Right.
reframing perfect.
Right.
Not moving goalposts, but reframing the context. So that
Yeah.
you can evaluate whether it's
Right.
it's good,
Right.
where it's at.
They say to set SMART goals. So
SMART is an acronym.
Yes, it sure is. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Yes, Jackie's well familiar with these. And I think by setting goals like that, where it forces you to set smaller goals.
It does.
And therefore you can achieve them even if you your goal ends up being perfection, you've achieved goals along the way. You don't end up with this psychotic sort of perfection.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the perfectionist is an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Because the people who are like seeking the absolute perfectionist tend to not be
Right.
at all like achieving that.
Right.
And it's like, what? It makes no sense. But I love the goals thing.
Yeah.
Because your biggest goal is only as worthy as each step you take to get there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So make each step mindful and excellent.
Excellent. Yes, and stop comparing yourself to others.
Oh, yeah, for real. That's so hard. I say that, and I'm like, that's my biggest problem right there. And I'm not even a perfectionist. I'm totally a type B personality. I do care a lot about excellence and process, though.
Right.
Because I know good process has good outcomes.
Right.
Right? But I still fall trapped
Well,
too.
I mean, it's hard with social media because it's so easy to compare yourself to
like, okay.
the highlight reel.
Here's my example for today. I ended up on LinkedIn this morning for a second, and I saw somebody's post about I am so excited to announce I am taking this new promoted position, da 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 da. And I became rageful.
Oh, no.
Right, because for me at that moment, it was like comparison city.
Aww.
And all those nasty phrases came out. Well, like, must be nice.
Aw.
Bless your heart. Good for you. All of those things. So we all do this. We all have moments. But that was my moment today. And then I had to stop myself and be like, you know what? I'm actually excited for him. This is about me. So we're going to close this tab.
For sure.
Move on.
For sure. And it's difficult to do.
Yeah.
I understand. Real life.
Ooh, real life.
Okay. So lemon caviar made from algae?
Okay, this was weird. I was like, this is vegan caviar.
Yeah, yes. Exactly.
But what it really is salty boba.
Yeah. Yes.
Salty lemon boba.
Yeah, sort of.
Or was it sweet?
It might have been sweet.
We don't know.
Molecular...
It was served on ocean foam. That's what I know.
Right. Yes. And a oyster.
And an oyster shell.
Yeah. I think there was an oyster in there.
I think there was an oyster in there.
But it was hidden.
It was hidden by the fancy boba.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So sodium alginate is basically vegan gelatin.
Okay.
It's made from algae, which is a plant. And it's very popular in molecular gastronomy. And it sounds really fancy, but it's pretty simple to do if you have the right ingredients. It's just...
time consuming, maybe?
Not even really.
Well, to you or to me, because you're way better in the kitchen than I am. And so you'll say things and say, oh, that's pretty easy. And I'm like, I just got so overwhelmed listening to it.
Oh, I think this is actually pretty easy. I mean, there's 9 steps, but I mean, it's real. It sounds like a lot, but there's only 4 ingredients. It's juice, cold water, calcium chloride, and sodium alginate. Basically, you make Jell-O out of the alginate and the juice.
Okay.
And then it starts to firm up. And before it's completely firm, you drop it into cold water with this calcium chloride and it spherifies it.
Okay, that's not so hard, but I would never do it.
I probably wouldn't do it either. I mean, I might do it for something really fancy, but
that is interesting though. But that is boba. Well, what are the steps to make boba? That's what that is.
I think that's basically what it is.
That's all that is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I'm not interested because I could put that on some plain yogurt, and I love that.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, well, maybe we do have to try this one.
Well, we'll
do
aerate our wine, and then we'll make
vegan caviar.
We'll have some molecular gastronomy fun. So there were no options on this menu.
Right, no.
And that is called a prefix menu.
Okay.
It literally means fixed price in French.
Okay.
And it's not prix fix.
No, I am looking at your thing here, and it's so funny because there's an X there. But
it's French, so yeah. It actually kind of started about 200 years ago in France, and while it's very fancy, now it was actually really not fancy back then because there weren't really fancy restaurants back then.
Well, and that is that thing. It's that whole taking the thing that's basic and making it fancy again.
Right.
Because the issue is that choice is actually a mechanism of freedom.
Right.
And so that idea that I can go in and order whatever I want to is such a, like...
It's new, really.
Yeah. And it's such a way to kind of... The customer is the higher class in that place because they're saying, go do this for me.
Do this.
It's made the artist the servants.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Instead of... There's a place in town you can go, and it's a little house. And they have like... It's really maybe about 20. And you have to make a reservation, and if they happen to have an open table, you can go. They do have a bar, so you can kind of go and hang out outside at different areas, but to sit and eat. But they have a prefix menu, but you can have choices of 3 different things. So there is a choice, but it's extremely limited.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless there's an allergy situation in which they will make. But when you make you have to kind of...
Yeah, it disclosed that. Yeah. Yeah. And it was basically the idea was that there were like taverns and inns and playhouses, people where people would gather. So it made sense to have food available, but it didn't make sense to take individual orders. So they basically say, this is what's available if you'd like to eat.
Yeah. And that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like, and this place in San Antonio, it's not, I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not that expensive.
Right. Oh,
you know,
that's cool.
Yeah. It's like $40 per person. But, you know, you can order from the bar and you can, you know, whatever. But, I mean, I think it is kind of cool. I have to admit, it kind of feels like a kid's birthday party.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, you go and you're served whatever. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. You know what I mean? But it makes practical sense. I'm totally there. It's just funny.
Right. Well, now it's a signal for fine dining to have a prefix menu. And what it's really doing is giving the power back to the quote unquote artist.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is the chef is recognized as someone at the top of their field. You're saying, you do your thing. I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
You know, within reason. And it's good for restaurants on special occasions where they expect a lot of people and they don't want to have to be making...
Their full menu.
Yeah. So Valentine's Day, you know, you go in and maybe you have a choice, maybe you don't. Yeah. But you know what the menu is going to be usually ahead of time as well. Right. So, and it helps them plan. And then
less waste.
Right. And then they can also build their menu around a season or a theme. These beautiful mushrooms came in. We're going to do a mushroom themed dinner.
Right.
Because...
Okay, you know what this makes me think of also? Gilmore Girls.
Oh,
Because she was always in the kitchen and she would have these ideas and whatever came in through the door, you know, that Jackson brought. And she would just... Yeah,
that's right.
Do whatever. And it was it was always prefix, really.
Really?
I mean, it was.
Yeah, this is what these are the beautiful this is what they might have certain other things, but like because Suki talked about the stuffed squash blossoms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And she'd get mad when the squash blossoms weren't available, but also understood that they couldn't always be available.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So they aged their protein 132 days. And then they had a very hilarious stick about what if you let it go 133 days, about how it would kill the people.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole, like, an article I'm going to post that talks about how maybe Margot didn't get off as easily as it might have seemed.
Oh, because she ate.
Because she had a burger. And perhaps it was an old burger. But... that'd be an extraordinarily long time to age, particularly a steak. So basically, according to the Robb Report, dry aging is a controlled decay process.
Right. It's delicious, by the way. Okay. I have had dry aged steaks and they are remarkably different.
Okay.
It's remarkable.
Right. But 132 days would be beyond what even the most foodie would probably appreciate. So for most people, if you're going to sell a dry aged steak, 30 to 35 days is about the the sweet spot. It
All right.
concentrates the flavors, but doesn't have quite as much waste. And it has the nutty, delicious flavor that you would expect. If they're going to sell to a restaurant, then it's actually 18 to 20 days.
So that they can then have it on stock.
Well, they can have it on stock, but also it doesn't get to the level of what they call funk.
Funk.
A regular person who's going in and having an aged steak would recognize as just a delicious flavor as opposed to it's turned.
Like, okay.
Yeah. So it can be safe 30 to
but
35 days.
But it's got a different flavor. It's got a funky flavor.
A little bit. And the particular person that they're talking to in this article said they prefer a 45-day and that a very long dry age would be 60 to 90 days. Really beyond 90 days, you're going to have almost nothing left. It's going to be
jerky.
Or completely rotten.
Oh,
all the way through.
Yuck.
Right. And that it has a very blue cheese flavor to it.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay. All right.
Like once it gets into those very extended days. But
sort of like Hershey's chocolate.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. We might have to post that on social media somewhere, but there's an article that we were talking about. And so Hershey's chocolate uses milk that's just about to turn. And they created that because doing that keeps it from being all melty and they can transport it and it becomes shelf stable.
Yeah.
So it was remarkable.
Yeah.
But that flavor of the milk being just at almost turning is what gives Hershey's its particular tang as opposed to like German chocolate or other European chocolates or whatever. Yeah.
Very interesting. Now, professionals will tell you not to do this at home, which what would you expect? But they actually have a good point that it's both for flavor and for safety because basically what you're doing is controlling the rot.
Right.
And you need a specific environment in which to do that. And most people don't have a refrigerator. Basically is what you need.
Okay.
Or large enough with enough area around it that you can dedicate to the dry aging process. And you can really make yourself very ill.
Oh, okay. Well, good to know.
So maybe don't
stick to the restaurants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't dry age at home. And then Chef Slowick started out his career in a modest kitchen. There's some other celebrities who also started off in
flipping burgers.
That's right. Basically, money.com has the story of four. I'm only going to talk about two real quick. Bobby Flay got kicked out of high school.
Oh.
And his dad told him he either needed to find another place to go to school or have a job.
Oh.
It was not a request. It was an order.
Yeah.
And so his dad set him up with a job as a busboy for 2 weeks, filling in for somebody who was out. And then the chef offered him a job in the kitchen and he made salads.
Okay.
And loved it.
And
that's how he got started.
That's
and then
fun.
Emeril Lagasse.
I've eaten in Vegas twice.
Yeah. It's pretty fantastic.
God.
Yeah. So he started out at the Moonlight Bakery in Massachusetts. His family went there and they took a shine to him and they offered him a job like washing dishes and stuff.
Yeah.
For like $1 an hour, hardly anything because he was a literal child.
Yeah.
And he got to know the guys in the back.
Yeah.
And they started teaching him things. By the time he was 14, he would work in the bakery from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., go to school, go home and go to sleep. And then his parents would wake him up, feed him dinner, and off he'd go and do it all again.
Oh my gosh.
But it was because he loved it.
He loved it.
He loved it. He was like in his element. And then there are other celebrity chefs who weren't chefs.
Okay.
And these are kind of interesting. So Ina Garten, the Barefoot Contessa, was a nuclear budget analyst. She worked in the White House for the Ford and Carter administrations.
Wow.
And found that the work wasn't as fulfilling as throwing the dinner parties that she was throwing on the weekends. So she decided to do that instead.
Okay. Well, there you go.
It worked out for her.
It did.
She was probably paid pretty well, probably had a pretty good nest egg in order to be able to make that leap. Martha Stewart, as a teenager, was a model.
Yep.
And then she went and worked on Wall Street, kind of learned how to build a business.
Yeah.
Maybe learned little things a little too
I was
well
gonna
or
say,
a little
like,
incorrectly, but then started a catering business, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Julia Child worked as a typist and a copywriter, and she had gone to college hoping to become a writer.
Oh.
Which, I mean, she eventually wrote books.
Right.
But about cooking.
About cooking. That makes sense.
Yeah. Rachel Ray worked as at the Macy's candy counter.
Oh.
Yeah, she did a good enough job that she got noticed.
Yeah.
And ended up getting promoted to manager and buyer position for their gourmet marketplace.
No,
so she had
that's
kind
how-
of a food related at least.
she did.
Ray Drummond, the pioneer woman, she was going to go to law school.
Okay.
And then she met her husband and they decided to, go live on a ranch in Oklahoma.
And do this whole thing.
And she blogged about it and now she's celebrity chef.
Yeah.
And then Sandra Lee, who
Okay.
does semi-homemade. I love her dessert cookbook. It's very fun.
Yeah?
She started out as a sales rep at home and garden shows for Black & Decker security systems and for stun guns.
Oh.
Which I did not know they sold at home and garden shows in the 90s, but evidently they did.
Well, security, I guess, home security.
Yeah.
Stun gun. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But she came up with a line of DIY curtain hardware called Curtain Craft.
Okay.
And that became like a $6 million business.
Wow.
Before she decided to change it around and do some things differently. But I looked at some of those curtains. They are not cute. I mean, it was like, they're not really curtains because you can't close them. They're more like window dressing.
Oh, okay. All
and
right.
there are these like loopy kind of things. And you like, it was very like 80s moms who still like the 80s style trying to look more modern.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I could picture the 80s when you said it and the wallpaper behind it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not great. And then that burger at the end of the movie. Let's talk about this for just a moment.
Looks so good.
I mean, for real, the people.com has a whole article about how you can techniques that you can use to make your own burgers look like that at home.
Okay.
And basically, you want to use an 80-20 ground beef.
Okay.
Make it into a ball. Touch it as little as possible.
That's okay. I recently kind of heard this.
Yeah, me too. And I've never really realized this.
HelloFresh.
Oh, okay.
Because Alex was making burgers one day, my son. And so he's making burgers. And he's like set the timer. And that little ball is on the little frying pan because he wasn't grilling. He was in the kitchen. And yeah, and then he flipped it at just the right time. And then he took it off.
And it was great, wasn't it?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah. But you make it in a little ball and then you smush it flat.
Yep.
Yeah. If you work it too much, you'll emulsify the fat into the meat. And that is not what you want. It makes it less flavorful. And that's the shaved yellow onion that they put it on top of the patty. And then when they flip it over, the onion gets steamed and grilled. And they suggest using American cheese.
Yeah, I hate American cheese.
You don't like it? But it melts in a particular way.
I know.
That's particularly good for this. I'm sure there's a fancier cheese or a nicer cheese.
Provolone.
Yeah, I do too.
It melts pretty good.
It melts similarly.
But something about American cheese, because it's not cheese.
Yeah, it's food, processed cheese food.
Yeah, I don't, guys.
So you don't like Velveeta either?
It's really hit or miss on whether it's a Velveeta kind of day.
Oh, okay.
But when it's melted, there is a certain thing about Velveeta. But it's more of a cheddar flavor.
True.
Than American cheese,
Sure.
which is a weird yellow color.
Yeah.
And it's floppy and sticky. It's just not my favorite. No, but I also really like real cheese.
Right.
Like blocks
that makes
of
sense.
cheese
Yes.
and weird cheese.
Right.
So, yeah. Actually, I like a burger without cheese.
Oh, okay.
Usually. I
Right.
don't put cheese on it.
Right.
That's always been a thing.
That's fine.
But I do love them onions.
Toast your bun. Pickles, ketchup, really whatever you want on it. I would probably put mayonnaise on it before I put ketchup on it, and then make sure you stack it. Yeah, you say 2 thin ones instead of 1 thick one is what they're suggesting for a burger that looks like the one in the movie.
Okay.
Because nobody left craving a rock with a scallop on it. We all left craving a burger.
Right. Exactly.
At the end of this movie, all you want is a burger.
All you want is a burger.
So next time we are going to, this is going to be tough for me to pull together, but I'm going to figure out a way to do it.
Freaking excited.
Me too, because season 4 of You is dropping February 9th. I know, it's so exciting, and I can't wait because Joe has reinvented himself yet again. He is living in London. He's a professor, and I can't wait to see his psychosis and his antics. And
I love this show.
I love it too, and I can't wait.
Me too.
So, all right, until next time, be safe, be kind, and wash your hands.
Da, da, da.